that retrograde planet. If you're born when a planet is stationary direct, this is the universe pushing that archetype forward. It means you've spent most recent past lives throwing off conditioning factors to that planetary archetype. And this time around, you are ready to make those evolutionary leaps forward. Now, here you are right up front with some of the dates for the Venus retrograde archetype. And I don't think I put that slide in, but I can give you the information because I'm remembering off of the top of my head. Venus in Leo, Venus entered its shadow, Virgo, Venus, oops, I got to turn these two around right there. I didn't catch that little part. Venus is then going to go retrograde and go back into Leo. You can see the highlight of the Venus retrograde cycle right here. We'll speak more to this. Venus direct goes into Virgo, then goes into Libra. The point I wanted to make is that with the Venus retrograde here, it will be in Leo 92 days, if I'm remembering correctly, in Leo, going into Virgo, bouncing back to Leo. Venus will be in Virgo 53 days. These 13 days right here, and then another month as it finishes up the third passage of Venus. So here's the dates of the three passages of Venus from the point it goes retrograde to the point it goes, here's a retrograde point, here's the direct point. And so here's where Venus entered shadow, and up until its retrograde here, July 25th, this is the first passage of Venus. Here's the retrograde passage from July 25th through September 6th when it goes direct at 14 Leo 23. And then here's the third passage that Venus makes from 14.5 Leo all the way to the 046 Virgo again. Essentially, in a nutshell, I always like to put a few of these points together. Venus retrograde in Virgo Leo means reviewing and letting go of judgments, guilt, inferiority, superiority, or ego complexes, false identities, drama extremes, all the love games we can play in relationships, and our childhood attention patterns, meaning our emotional displacement patterning. We'll go into this in more detail as we go through the slides, but I just wanted to give you some little key phrases that you can be pondering and thinking of as we go through all of our slides here. Now, the Venus retrograde polarity will point to Aquarius and then finish up in Pisces as Venus goes direct and moves through Virgo again. So here we have to embrace objective awareness and acceptance of our positions in life, who we uniquely are, fairness with self and others, emotional self-reliance on deepest levels possible, and reconnection with the ultimate resource in love, which is universal source. In other words, we're going to be looking for real, honest, deep self-love, inner self-love. It's always Venus retrograde. It's emphasized when there is a retrograde in Virgo Leo. And we are going to find love reflected back from others to the degree that we find it within ourselves. Back to a little astronomy. Venus has a revolution around the sun that is 225 days. It is less than that calendar year. And with its retrogrades, it makes it seem as though Venus is always traveling more or less with the sun. Its revolution around the zodiac is anywhere from 9 to 14 months out of the year. It is one of the rarest retrograde cycles. Jeffrey used to teach about 10% of the time. I went back and checked some of these retrograde cycles, and it's really more accurately about 7 to 8% of the time that Venus is retrograde in a calendar year. So that is the rarest retrograde cycle. It goes retrograde approximately every 19 months, and its retrograde period is 40 to 43 days. Its stationary period, stationary retrograde, stationary direct, 2 days. It appears to stand still in the sky 2 days when it changes directions, both ends of the spectrum, retrograde and direct. It is retrograde approximately 4 months in one sign with any retrograde period. Now in this case, with 2 signs of the zodiac, it can extend into those 2 signs approximately 5 months. 92 days in Virgo, 92 days in Leo, 52 days in Virgo. Every 8 years, though, we have 5 Venus retrograde cycles, and they make a 5-pointed star in the circle or the zodiac, known as the pentagram. This is why Venus is another symbol for the pentagram, which is dividing the circle by 5. Now, each point in this retrograde cycle occurs 2 to 3 days earlier and 2 to 3 degrees earlier each time it repeats in one of those 5 points. I'll show you this visually in the next slide. So we have a 104-year cycle in which Venus reverses through one of the signs on each point of the pentagram. So let me show you this a little bit differently. And here's pictures of Kim Marie when she used to be a dancer. I left this in from the last time I did a Venus retrograde class. Here's how it works visually. The Venus retrograde cycles will go from Aries, Scorpio, Libra, Gemini, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Virgo, Leo. I'm talking stationary retrograde points here, okay? And then it starts over. Aries, Scorpio, Libra, Gemini, Aquarius, Capricorn, Virgo, Leo, back to Aries. Now, the last time we had Venus stationary retrograde starting through Virgo was 2007, 1999, 91, 1983. This was my divorce out of the blue. 1975, 1967, 59, 51. So yes, those Venus retrogrades can bring some intense dramas. Venus was going retrograde over my natal Pluto in Virgo during this retrograde cycle here. And let me look at it, show it to you here with a little more detail. From 1911 through 2015, every time Venus went retrograde, every 8 years, it started in Virgo. You go back to summer of 1911, Venus went retrograde in Virgo at about 28, 29 degrees Virgo. And now we have it going retrograde between 0 and 1. So for 104 years, every 8 years that Venus went retrograde on this point, it started again 28, 29 degrees Virgo. Then 8 years later, 26, 27 degrees Virgo, all the way to 2015, where it's starting to go retrograde 01 degrees Virgo. So more on this interpretation-wise in a little later. This is concentrating on the astronomy. There's multiple fairy tales that are related to Venus cycles in the sky. And this one, this 104-year cycle, as this 5-pointed star reverses through the zodiac, relates to the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale of the princess falling asleep for 100 years, and she must be kissed by the prince before she wakes up. If you want to, you can watch the Disney movies around Venus. There's a new one with Angelina Jolie that looks at the distortions and shadow and brings them into a fuller picture. And you can get some of the deeper symbolisms of these Venus retrograde cycles through the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale. 8 years from now, 2023, the next time Venus goes retrograde, it will go retrograde at 28 Leo, 36 minutes, and will go 104 years from 2023 with Venus every 8 years, starting retrogrades in Leo. So this is also significant that we're finishing up Venus retrogrades in Leo initiations and starting Venus retrogrades in Leo. Again, I'll say more on this a little later. Here's some more Venus